Hello, my name is Kai Clemens, and I'm here to talk to you about all the school board issues. To start with, we have timing and hour switch, which is the Iowa City School Board is deciding to approve a new schedule for elementary and secondary schools in order to count instructional time in hours rather than days. Now what that would mean is that elementary schools would start at 8:45 and end at 3:45. Just adding about a half hour to the day. Junior high students would be starting at 8 and ending at 3:10, which is about the same. And that would cause the total number of days to change from 180 to 175 due to built-in snow days. This would also mean teachers would have to work about 15 minutes more, and the last day of school would be on May 25th. Obviously, there's some concerns mentioned during the school board meeting concerning scheduling for the students, such as other activities such as sports, musical classes, and job conflicts. However, the most important issue mentioned was concern for students' mental health being. School starts earlier and earlier, and many studies show that they would do much better if they started school later in the day. Also, there could be an increase in car crashes due to tiredness and just waking up really early in addition to sports. The next issue was staffing plan. The Iowa City Community School District proposes a new plan that tries to add more minority staff to address disproportionalities among faculty and staff based on ethnicity, race, gender, and sexual orientation. The proposed plan would take 5 years up to 2020 to increase the minority staff by 15%. Currently, there are only 4 1/3 teachers are minorities. 4 1/3% are minorities. This plan also aims to reduce race, gender, and ethnicity-based disproportionalities among students in terms of discipline. As a side issue, in many places, 75% of staff are females, and the district would like to see more of a 50-50 split between that. These kinds of decisions are especially important for those that will be attending the new Liberty High School and the Hoover Elementary, because these changes would be implemented there first. Next issue up, school funding. The dispute on how much money the state should send to Iowa schools is really the way that it should be said. The House of Republicans filed legislation Tuesday that would increase funding to K-12 public schools by 2% for the school year that starts the fall of 2016. That is less than proposed by the Senate Democrats at 4% and Republican Governor Branstad at 2.45%. Compromise being considered essentially would equate to 2.625% increase for the coming year, with 1.25% going into the budget baseline for the following year. Next up, we have more budget cuts. They really are trying to assemble a budget plan that involves teachers losing their jobs, because that is where they save the most money, is when there's less teachers. So they're trying to get less teachers. That would cause bigger classroom sizes, unfortunately. That would hopefully end up merging into a spending plan. The House Appropriations Committee voted 14-11 to approve a higher education funding measure that would commit $977.6 million in general fund appropriations to Iowa's region universities, community colleges, workforce training efforts, private college tuition grants, and other programs. Next up, we have a stronger anti-bullying policy. The anti-bullying policy would really be doing is improving the teachers' and parents' ability to watch kids and make sure that they aren't misbehaving towards each other. That would also include having the parents talk to the kids more and being more involved in what they do and how they live their lives, because a lot of students need a lot of protection and supervision, because a lot of students just are bullied for really no reason, and the biggest reason for that is ignorance, and we need the parents to be alerted due to just the problems that they have. They need to be alerted by the school, and they need to talk about it at home, and they really need to be able to protect themselves from this kind of danger. The policy states that schools are to notify the parents when the student is involved in a bully incident, and the administrators are to discipline students for bullying even if it takes place off school grounds if the incident creates a hostile atmosphere in the school's environment. Next up, lunch data is being used to determine poverty. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has now ruled that the Iowa City School Community District can use free and reduced lunch eligibility in conjunction with other factors when determining school boundaries. This is a change to earlier decision that banned them from using only FRL data. The new boundaries, Plan 5F, were approved last week and will begin when the new school at Liberty High will be up and running in 2017. To determine poverty levels, this year's administrators use heat maps, which measure out in each school how many kids they're qualified for free or reduced school lunch. In addition, board members have included data about students that are English language learners or in special education programs while determining the new boundaries of Liberty High School. The decision has been a really hotly debated topic, and this debate will surely continue as the school board identifies new decisions with elementary and high school boundaries. Our next issue is students' transportation options. The Iowa City Community School Board members and officials from several cities may look into adding public bus stops near schools as boundaries change and new schools open in the district. Coralville, Iowa City, and North Liberty officials said they are open to discussing public transit options with the board, although factors include Federal Transit Administration guidelines and available funding limit their options to serve students. It will be in 2017 when the school boundaries and new schools will be open. The board plans to set new junior high and high school boundaries in May. FTA rules limit how cities can transport students to school and school activities when the services are in competition with private transportation providers. However, the district provides busing to and from school for elementary students living 2 miles away from their assigned schools and high school students living 3 or more miles away from their assigned schools. Parents expressed concerns and proposed bound lines is up next. Scenario 4F would send students from Kirkwood to North Central Junior High and Liberty High opening in 2017 rather than Northwest Junior High and West High. The schools Kirkwood students currently attend are Iowa City, Liberty, and Coralville Community. And parents are involved in this boundaries problem as well. The new boundaries established a feeder system that sends students from Northwest to West, students from Southeast to City High, and students from North Central to Liberty. The new boundaries will take effect in 2017 when Liberty opens in North Liberty. The majority of the board supports a set of boundaries that prioritize demographic balance and is based on current elementary school boundaries. The board discussed allowing Kirkwood families to attend Northwest if they wanted to, but he said the district would provide busing only for the students if they attend North Central. Thank you. My name is Kai Clemens, and this is the school board. The district recently released their plan to increase the numbers of minorities and men in the district. Why is this an important goal?
It's an important goal just for, establishing different backgrounds and just different people from various walks of life. I think, from one standpoint, you look at it from the, we are touted out to be, a schools or a school district that really supports a global kind of perspective as culture is concerned and other things, and we want to make sure that's incorporated within our staff as well. And I think, again, having individuals from diverse backgrounds, but still maintaining the level and standard of high expectations of a teacher in the district, I think is really important. And so I'm excited to kind of be, I wouldn't say the lead on that, but work with, a great team with administrators to get that done.
What does the district intend to do to increase the percentages of minority staff and faculty?
There's a lot of different things. I think it's expanding our partnerships with universities and other local universities within the Iowa area. You go to Kirkwood, or not Kirkwood per se, but you can look at University of Iowa, Iowa State, UNI, which is a huge teaching university. Some of the other things is changing how we recruit in a sense, being more quote unquote private business oriented, and so having recruitment packages. Speaking of the allure of coming to Iowa City, not just focusing on the fact that we're we have a great teaching institution, but beyond that, you know, what things in the community can you be a part of, you know, what type of offerings from an academic standpoint, educational standpoint that you can have later on. And then really, you know, focusing on, you know, trying to develop, you know, partnerships with feeder institutions from HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions. I actually need to make a call into a Native American university, primarily Native American university, to get some, see if we can get some Native American teachers in here. And so it's like, it's going to be a lot of different things going on from that standpoint, and trying to figure out, you know, what can work, what's sustainable, and because I mean I think it's, you know, it's great to, you know, shoot for a goal, but you have to make sure it's sustainable from that standpoint, and figure out what we can do. I mean, again, it's an important endeavor. It's something that I think the school district's had in their mission statement for a long time. And I think that, you know, we've done what we can do to kind of achieve that. And so my goal is to figure out what we can do to get us that much further.
I thought I heard something about a lot of teachers being cut in the near future. Is that going to affect hiring more?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a budget cuts of any kind, it's gonna affect teachers. I mean, because then you don't necessarily have the influx of new teachers that you would normally have in order to, you know, and in order to supplement that, you know, the teachers retiring or whatever the case may be. But you know, it does, I wouldn't say hurt, but it does make it difficult from, you know, hiring more diverse staff, because if you cut teachers, then you don't necessarily have new positions outside of retirees, and sometimes you look at that from a nutrition standpoint, that you don't necessarily want to fill those positions in some type of way if you don't have to. And so it's you know, it's a difficult situation. I'm glad you asked that question, because that's something that I'm like trying to work through right now, as far as trying to navigate, you know, where the governor and has put us in with the kind of budget situation, but also how to diversify staff on that level. And so it's just going to have to be a continually working model.
Ms. Fields, were you pleased with the process for the latest boundary decision?
I was pleased with the process. I think that the board had done a lot of work kind of sorting through some different ideas and setting priorities before it went out into the community for feedback. I think that it's always difficult when you're talking about boundaries, because you're talking about families, you're talking about students, and it becomes emotional. And I could pretty much tell you that as we were setting priorities as a board of what we wanted the district to look like, and when we're opening another high school to have 3 high schools, what we want for all 3, that isn't always popular with all parents and families, especially the ones who would then be moving or would not get the choice they wanted. And so I think that's what we heard. But in the end, I think it was a good process. I think it allowed people to have the opportunity to say what they needed to say. I hope now that a decision has been made that the district can move forward.
You voted to approve version 5F. What goals do you believe will be achieved with this plan?
The goals for 5F really I thought addressed was good balance between the 3 high schools. I think it was important for us to look at all 3 and say, how do we make sure that our schools have similar makeup of their student body as well as numbers, and also enough that the students who may have other barriers to learning or some things involved, that it is a good mix of students, and that it's not concentrated in one area. Some of the scenarios had some very off-balance numbers. I think the other important part of 5F was that it wasn't opening the 3rd high school at capacity or even close to over its capacity. One of the things that's happened when we've opened new schools in the recent history, when they've been all elementary schools, we've opened them close to being at capacity, and then pretty soon in a year or 2 we have temporary buildings outside, and then we're really not being responsible about how we're growing into buildings.
As an outgoing board member, what are some of the things you would like to see in the future regarding boundary decisions?
Yeah, I think that going forward, we know that the community has some strong values around neighborhood schools for elementaries. I think it's really important for parent engagement and family engagement in schools to have an elementary school that's closest or as close as possible to their neighborhood. I also think it's important that as the district continues to grow, and there are a lot of policies in place that affect the school district, that we don't have much control over, such as housing patterns and the things that happen at the city and the county level. So, which regarding to streets and roads and things like that. So I think that also growing forward with boundaries, that I hope that the future boards continue to look at some of the values that we've really set forth on balance and neighborhood schools.
The Iowa House defeated Governor Branson's anti-bullying legislation. Do you want to see this bill passed, and why?
I do. I think anything that can put some more support and strength behind anti-bullying is important. I think that there are a lot of things and policies in place that we've put in place over the years. There was another anti-bullying, anti-discrimination that came through a few years ago, but this was stronger. This was really looking at some of the things that happen through social media, some of the things that happen outside of schools that have certainly a big effect inside schools. And I think the more that we can do as a state to do this is really important. I think that there's a lot of really good things that happen within our own buildings in our district that help with that, but anything that we can do to make it stronger is important.
That brings us to our next question. What role do you think schools should play in preventing bullying through social media?
Well, that's a tough one because when you're talking about things that happen outside of kind of the school, and it could happen during school, but mostly it's probably happening on the outside, that's harder. But I think once school knows that something is happening, I think it is important to address it because it does affect learning, it affects what happens inside our buildings. And so, but it does take someone letting someone else know what's going on. And I think that's what's tough because it's not always easy to talk about. It may be easier to just try and muscle through it. And I think it's going to be an ongoing issue.
I can see how it can be kind of controversial.
Well, I don't think that it's hard to say to pull in there because there's also parental piece in here too of trying to control what happens on social media. But if there's an issue that spills over and if it's affecting someone and their interactions in school and making school not feel safe, absolutely school has a role in that.
The school district recently announced a goal of increasing the number of minority teachers in the schools. Do you think that's important, and should the school district do to achieve the goal? What should they do?
I think it is important. I think it's a very lofty goal. It raises much higher than what we've looked at before, but it also takes into account the diversity of our student body, that our own district is growing in diversity, and I think it's important for students to see teachers and leaders throughout the school district of all races and male and female. I think that those are really important. We tend to have smaller goals, and this one takes a bit step further. So it does take some challenge, but I think that it also takes some creativity in how to recruit both teachers and administrators of color, and because we also have to be able to have a community that welcomes them, that also has things that will be important for them, such as arts and culture and opportunities for other kinds of activities. It's not just about the school district, it's about our community.
Last year, the school district had to make a lot of cuts. Are there any cuts planned for this year?
Yeah. If you've followed anything that happened around school budgets and what the legislature and the governor were talking about, how much they were willing to put into schools, it's been not what we ask for and lobby for and advocate for, because as we're a growing district, it's one of the things that we do need resources to be able to do the things that we want to do in the classroom and have the co-curriculars and extracurriculars that we have. And they still have not fully passed funding for next year, which is always difficult when you have to set a budget by April 15th and how to do that. And so right now, per se, we haven't been given a lot of direction that there's going to be significant cuts. However, what happens is it's a cut by attrition. So when we have retiring teachers who may be leaving and then have open spots, they may not fill them. So there'll be less teachers. So in that case, no one loses their job, but we could definitely have an impact on class size, course offerings, and those types of things. So it's, while not as easy to understand the budget cuts, like last year, like, oh my gosh, everything from 7th grade football to 7th grade world languages to German here, right, and some guidance cuts and some things that were really hard. And then now it may not be cuts that you can see directly like that, but if we aren't filling teaching positions, that means there's that many fewer classes to be able to offer. There's more students in elementary classrooms, things like that.
Linking it back to our previous question about minority teachers in schools, if there's going to be less teachers, how are we supposed to get more minorities?
Yeah, well, it's about recruitment and bringing new teachers here and new administrators. I think that's the other part of it that's really important, is having administrators, so principals and assistant principals that are of color too. It will be hard. It'll be hard to know those kinds of things. I think we have a long way to go. There's only so far you can go with filling teachers, but I do believe we'll see bigger class sizes up and down next year.